What's going on, everybody? Welcome inside the MRN studios once again here in Concord, North Carolina for another edition of NASCAR Coast to Coast, where we discuss all things NASCAR short track and regional series from coast to coast. My name is Chris Wilner, as always, MRN pit reporter, and it's a special day today. It's my birthday, so be nice to me here on March 27th, 2025, but just recovered from putting the aloe vera on from Homestead Miami Speedway weekend. The sun was out. We didn't have any issues with the wildfires, although we are still thinking of those that are dealing with those wildfires there on the southern part of Miami-Dade County and into the Keys, and hopefully everybody stays safe down there. But it didn't affect us. What a great weekend. Had a couple of Larson wins at his favorite racetrack. Almost went 3 for 3 if it wasn't for a little restart getting jacked up by Sam Mayer. But other than that, Motor Racing Network had a great time down there at Homestead, and we're ready to rack them up and do it again as we go from South Florida up to Virginia and Martinsville Speedway to the paperclip for another short track race 2025. Special guest this week on Coast to Coast is none other than Ryan Vargas. You've probably heard his name many a times in the NASCAR world. Has been a part of the NASCAR Xfinity Series, the Truck Series. He's now the Globetrotter for NASCAR. He's done NASCAR Euro across the pond, and now making news this week. He's running NASCAR Canada in 2025. So we're going to discuss Ryan's journey and, of course, what his plans are for this season. And, of course, we're going to look at the calendar of short track racing as, once again, the warmer temperatures mean a lot of racing coming up on the regional schedule. Quick look back to last week before we get to Ryan Vargas, the ASA Stars National Tour, the Sunshine State 200. Over the weekend, Appalachian Sucker Punch at Five Flags Speedway, and it was none other than Cole Butcher who dominated dominated the second round of the ASA Stars National Tour, but it wasn't all easy. It came down to a late race restart, holding off drivers like Jake Garcia, who, of course, is a Truck Series regular with Thor Sport, and Matthew Craig. Those two gave him a run for his money, but Cole Butcher was able to get the win. Gavin Boschel had another good run this weekend, and Stephen Nasse did as well. So those two now, it's starting to shape up to be a title fight between the youngster and the veteran coming up this season. Of course, they continue on 2025 with the Appalachian Sucker Punch 250 presented by Jones Utilities at Dominion Raceway coming up not this weekend, but the following weekend on Saturday, April 5th. ARCA East, we mentioned last week, finally getting their season off the ground. We've talked about the ARCA Menard Series platform, of course, also ARCA West being already 2 races into the season, but ARCA East opened up at Pensacola at Five Flags in a combo event with the ASA Stars National Tour, and it was the youngster Cookouts Max Reeves getting his first career win in the season opener for Joe Gibbs Racing, who we know anytime a Joe Gibbs Racing car is on the racetrack, they're going to be the ones to beat. Max Reeves did a really good job battling with Cole Raz. They had some contact, and Max able to get his first win and bring Joe Gibbs back to victory lane in the ARCA East Series. Of course, they've won now 4 of the last 5 races at Five Flags Speedway, Joe Gibbs has, with several different drivers behind the wheel, including William Sawalich. So congratulations to them. Max Reeves getting his first win of the season, was dominant. Again, multiple challenges, though, between Raz. Connor Mosack, of course, in the Truck Series full-time, coming down to the ARCA East platform as well for, I believe he's running for Venturini or Bill McAnally, one of those two, but he did a really good job finishing top 3. And then Tyler Reif finished in that 3rd position. Mosack had a rebound from a spin. What a rebound for them. And then we mentioned Timmy Hill built a brand new race car and going ARCA East Racing for the first time, full season this year, and he finished in the top 10, finished 7th. So congratulations to Timmy as he builds that ARCA East program. They're back in action in a couple weeks. Meanwhile, ARCA West is next, coming up on April 5th at Tucson Speedway. Some other winners over the weekend. Congratulations to Wyatt Miller. We mentioned the grandson of Dale Earnhardt, and of course, nephew of Dale Jr. is now a pavement late model driver. We've talked about him on the dirt here at Millbridge Speedway, just up the road from us here in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, but now tackling the pavement late models, the limited late models. Second try, gets his first win. So really nice job for him at Hickory Motor Speedway. And then Trevor Ward won at South Boston Speedway in their opener for South Boston's weekly series in the NASCAR Advance Auto Parts Weekly Championship. He held off some stout drivers, Landon Pembleton, Mike Looney, some names we're used to reading, especially when we go up and run the late model race at Martinsville Speedway. So congratulations to Trevor Ward, a former winner, by the way, of the Valley Star Credit Union 300. And Jet Nolan, his second pro late model win at Cordell for the year in the Georgia Spring Nationals, picked up the win. So news coming in this week, as this episode airs, we would have already known what happened. But this week, Kyle Busch and Brexton Busch finally going head-to-head, father and son, in the same car for the first time this year at Millbridge Speedway in the Wing Micro Division. I'll actually be up there calling that race, but of course, as this airs, we already know what happens, but exciting times for the Busch family. And then, of course, Matt Hirschman, who was just recently crowned King of the Modifieds at South Boston Speedway with the big $20,000 to win race over the weekend for the Smart Modified Tour. But he wasn't the biggest story of the weekend. It was the Tommy Baldwin Part 2 with the Crum Racing folks, Jake Crum and Luke Baldwin, or Jack Baldwin, getting into it for a second straight Smart Modified Tour race of the season. Tommy was not happy, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, just watch the video. Flow Racing and on social media, he went after it. Not happy with the Jake Crum folks, but be interesting development to see what spills over as that series continues in 2025. Well, Ryan Vargas is standing by here, getting ready to pop on into the studio, so we're going to take a quick time out and visit with the driver going NASCAR Canada racing here in 2025. Ryan Vargas is our guest. He's next here on NASCAR Coast to Coast.
3, 2, 1, start your engine!
The NASCAR channel is streaming now, exclusively on Tubi.
Tell them we got it!
Go deeper into NASCAR with 24/7 news, documentaries, and explore the vault of timeless NASCAR stories and unforgettable races. From crushing defeats to the thrill of victory.
Go, baby!
The NASCAR channel, always on, always free. Only on Tubi.
Welcome back to NASCAR Coast to Coast here on the Motor Racing Network. As promised, joining me in studio, the one and only Ryan Vargas. Big news this week, my friend. Going NASCAR Canada racing. Yeah. You've been globe-trotting these last 2 years, but tell me about the deal going north of the border here this year.
Yeah, I went into the off-season, and, I had a really great meeting with my friends at Critical Path Security, and we absolutely loved our trip to Europe, right? We enjoyed that season. Everything was just incredible. And we went into this off-season, we're like, okay, what's the next step? How do we move forward? Because, another year in Europe, it'd be cool, but, how do we parlay this into, growing and kind of keeping the international train rolling, but also kind of doing this closer to home. And that's where we kind of landed on Canada. And it was really cool. And I've said this before, but, I made the call to DJ. He was the first call I made, and luckily he picked up. And, I kind of told him the deal, and we kind of put it all together. It's very much still a work in progress. We're having to kind of build it all out and try and figure out, because I announced it in the deal. It's not a full-time deal yet. It's a majority-time deal. So knock on wood, we get some extra partners to jump aboard. But nonetheless, running a majority of the season in NASCAR Canada is exciting. I've loved the series. I love all the international NASCAR series, personally. I just think it's the coolest thing to see kind of the reach that NASCAR has internationally, but also just the quality of racing. I think the racing is spectacular.
Yeah, and you mentioned DJ Kennington, who you're going to be driving for. The season begins May 18th, so you've got some time, but you mentioned you're a big fan of the series, and I know, us on Coast to Coast getting to follow it a little bit more, especially now lately over the years it's been on Flow, so we've been able to watch the races and really get in tune with it. What stands out about NASCAR Canada for you? Is it the racing? Is it the tracks? A little mix of everything? What drew your attention to that?
I think it's a mix of everything. I mean, I know the cars have, a decent amount of power. I know it's a pretty split down the middle, 50-50 road race, oval series, which I really like.
Yeah.
I started my NASCAR adventure not being a road course guy, but it ended up having my second Xfinity start be a road course, which was hilarious.
Funny how it works out that way.
It's funny how that works, but thankfully, over the years, I feel a heck of a lot more comfortable. Honestly, you put me in a car on a road course, I feel a lot more comfortable on there sometimes than some of the ovals. It's just how it's been lately, and I think going into this year with the added experience I got racing over in Europe, coming back to race here in North America, I guess you could say, getting to split that time on the road courses up there. We start at CTMP. Oh, I love it. And then go run some of the ovals up there. It's such a diverse schedule, but it's a lot of kind of what makes NASCAR racing great, short track racing,
Sure.
Beating and banging, road racing, and then there's even a street course in the middle of that. So that's going to be really cool.
Yeah, a wide variety of tracks for sure. We've seen guys over the last few years, like an Alex LeBay, come over from NASCAR Canada. Have you leaned on him much? Because now you're going the opposite direction. Yeah. You're going north of the border. So what's that relationship like? And maybe have you started to pick his brain on how I'm going to run in this series?
Yeah, I talked to LeBay actually at COTA. I was like, hey, do you mind if I just start picking your brain as this
Yeah.
goes on. And he was like, absolutely. Like, LeBay has always been a really good guy, really great friend, and leaned on him a lot, in the Xfinity side a little bit. And then now going to Canada, like you mentioned, doing the opposite route there, kind of going from Xfinity to Canada. It's been an interesting change, to say the least.
What is the prep like? And obviously, I'm sure that prep continues before we start May 9th or May 18th at Canada, but the fact that you also ran all these new tracks in NASCAR Euro last year. I mean, Brands Hatch, we were talking about Valanga, like there's Czech Republic. What goes in? Because there's probably not an easy sim to simulate all those. So how did you prepare, and how will you prepare for a lot of these tracks coming up this year?
Yeah, no, I'm an iRacing guy through and through, but a lot of these tracks, they don't have on iRacing. So, that kind of comes down to our factor, trying to find some, fan-made models of it, or Assetto Corsa, trying to find some fan-made models of those tracks. And the good thing is, with a lot of these places, I've been able to kind of take some time and really learn about the different lines, different ways you attack these corners, because that's what I had to do in Europe, right? I had to learn this on the fly, and you mentioned the Czech Republic race. That was I think it was a 19-turn road course that I had to learn.
Jeez.
And it, like, thankfully I had like a month or two to figure it out, because I think that was the first race after our summer break. But nonetheless, it was it's a challenge, to say the least. But for me, I've just always been a really good visual learner. If somebody tells me to do something, it's in one ear or the other. But when it comes to, studying footage, running sim laps, getting myself, being able to visualize myself in the race seat, that's what's helped me out a lot.
When you ran those Euro races last year, I think we even had this conversation. I remember we were on pit road somewhere, and I asked you about it, and you were like, there's NASCAR fans that are crazy across the pond. Like, what was the atmosphere like? Obviously, these cars are different, right? They're not next-gen cars racing over there, but, like, it's still a NASCAR series, and yes, we're in a Formula One dominated area across the pond, but at the same time, there was quite a big of following for NASCAR Euro.
Yeah, there's a ton of fans that want to be over there, that want to see NASCAR racing in Europe, right? I mean, I could sit here all day and gush about it. It's just so cool to see how many people showed up for these races. I mean, the Brands Hatch, we had 55,000 fans throughout the weekend. The Czech Republic had 15, I think, on one of the days. So, I mean, it's just, those are good numbers for a NASCAR series that isn't even in its, home turf, I guess you could say, right? So it's just really cool to see how many fans are out there. And also, I mean, like I said, they're NASCAR fans. They know what they're talking about. Like, they got done, like, some of these guys, they watched the Xfinity race on Saturday at, like, midnight for them.
Sure, yeah.
And then would come to the race the next day and say, like, man, Justin Allgaier almost had it. And I'm like, are you stayed up
You guys
that
are
late?
tuned in.
Like, you guys are tuned in. And, like, I had people bring in my, old JD Motorsports hero cards. I had somebody bring some die casts of mine. Like, there was, when you go to the tracks and you see the vendors, like the fan vendors across the street or whatever, there was that there. I mean, there's a die. I went and checked it out, and I saw a stack of my die casts there, and they were selling because I was in the race.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
It was really cool to see that.
What's going to be the difference, and for those of us that are novice when it comes to both NASCAR Canada and the Euro, what are the differences with the cars between the two? Because obviously now you're going to have to learn how to run this Dodge Challenger. That's probably going to be a little different than what you ran across, in Europe last year.
Yeah, so from what I understand, and I could be entirely wrong and just be talking out of my rear, but, from what I understand, the Euro cars and the Canadian cars, they run very similar chassis, which bodes well for me. But the other half of that is they do have a bit more horsepower. I believe the Canada cars have about 100 to 150 more horsepower than the Canada cars. I believe they run kind of like the Yates package or whatever.
Yep.
And kind of like the old NASCAR K&N.
Oh, okay.
Package.
Yes.
I believe they also run bias ply tires, which is going to be...
Really?
So that's going to be something that suits me really well, because that's what I just got done using over in Europe. So that's going to be a change, but not too bad of a change. But the other thing that these fans are going to notice is the profile of the car is a lot lower. They're a lot more low, squished, kind of wide-looking race cars. They're very much built for every type of racing. Whereas, like, you look at the Xfinity series, I'm not going to really reference the Cup series because the next-gen car, it's made for everything. But, you look at the Xfinity and Truck series, there's a road course car, an intermediate car, short track car.
Right.
Whereas these cars, these same chassis, it's not like the next-gen where you can switch out the clips and it's different, right? It's It's the same car, but, it works for all of them. It's very much a road course capable car. The way I would say it is if you looked at putting like an Xfinity car and a TA2 together, and that's kind of what I would say is, the Canadian car.
And it's got to run, like you said, multiple different tracks, including dirt. How are you on the dirt? You ready for that?
So I don't think the dirt race is not back on the schedule.
Oh, okay.
Which I'm really sad about. I want to do it. I'm trying to run the ARCA race.
Yes.
I like.
We got two, right? Springfield and DuQuoin.
Yeah, DuQuoin is a conflict with one of the Canada races.
Okay.
So Springfield's the one on the docket that I'm trying to do. I mean, and everyone tells me it's like, man, that's so goofy. Why are you wanting to do that? I'm like, you just said it. It's goofy. I want to do it. Like, it looks awesome.
Yeah.
I'm kind of in that point in my career where I want to keep driving race cars. I want to have fun driving race cars. And I want to treat this like it is I don't care what I drive, right? I could go out there, drive a Canadian car, a Euro car, an Xfinity car, a truck, whatever it is. As long as I'm having fun and I'm able to live, that's all I care about. And I'm really enjoying this, path that I'm on right now.
Well, you mentioned your career, which has gone all over the place, from starting in ARCA and then all this, you're in Xfinity and trucks, and now you're doing Euro, and then now, Canada. Let's go back. How does a kid from Southern California, just outside LA, even get the racing bug? Because I mean, having been out there, racing's not exactly the number one priority. So how do you start kind of forging that path as a young kid? Yeah.
So ironically, this started because of Monster Jam. I went to the Monster Jam shows at Anaheim as a kid, and that kind of fueled my excitement for cars and racing and all that stuff. And then my dad made the mistake of taking me to Urbandale Speedway as a kid, and we found out what Bandolero cars were. Learned about those, saw one of the recess aids from my elementary school there, and I was like, what are you doing here? You exist out of school. But turns out her son had a Bandolero, and they were just getting out of it. And so my eyes, grew, and I looked at my parents, and I'm like, hey, this is a thing that, I want to do. And that was the first time they'd ever seen that, because, I play all the other sports. I played baseball, soccer, football, all that, and I sucked, and I was so unenthusiastic about it. I would spend days sitting in my room, and my parents would be like, all right, time for the game. It's like, do I have to? Like, I don't want to go. Like, this sucks.
Yeah.
And now I'm sitting here begging to do something, and they're like, all right, maybe there's something that he wants to do. And bought the Bandolero. I sucked my first time in it. I pounded the wall, but after that I learned, and I ended up winning the state championship my first year, won it the next 2 years, tied for the national title my third year, ran street stocks, moved up to late models, and then eventually got picked up, through D4D in the Rev Racing program, and got to run a season over here. And that's really what opened the door for me, was being able to meet the incredible folks at NASCAR, being able to meet, team owners, people within the garage area that, someone like myself wouldn't have been able to meet. Because in 2017, I vividly remember the night where I was sitting at my dinner table with my family, and they told me just straight up, they said, Ryan, we're not going to be able to race next year. Like, we are done.
Yeah.
If we could keep the car and go run, 2 or 3 races, have some fun, but you need to focus on college. And I was like, cool. Yeah, I'm fine. Like, I was heartbroken, but at the same time, I had witnessed people, put their houses up to try and go racing, right? And it's like, I'm very fortunate that my mom and dad, at a very early point in my racing career, kind of showed to me the value of that, right? Like, we were winning late model races, but we weren't showing up with the greatest of the great. We weren't showing up in the biggest hauler. We were doing what we could, and we, don't get me wrong, we maximized it. My old late model crew chief, Charles Price, he found ways to make that thing work, and it was awesome. But at the end of the day, me getting out here and doing that, I would have never had that opportunity.
But that's what makes that so special and probably rewarding, right? Because it's not just, I had the latest and greatest, so there was no excuses to win. It was, I did it our way with what we had and maximized it the most. You mentioned Rev Racing. I know it's now been, 7-8 years since you were probably a part of that program. How cool is it to see that program still flourishing now, bringing the next wave of drivers in? And I mean, you'll forever be part of the storied list of drivers that have raced for them. Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. It's awesome what Max and Booker and everybody over there has done to kind of grow that program. And I credit that whole deal with getting me out here, obviously, and getting me into the racing world out here, right? Because at the end of the day, like I said, I was supposed to be done racing. I wasn't going to drive anything. So it was an incredible opportunity.
looking back on it, there's a million things I would have done different. I was a 17-year-old kid who had no idea what I was doing, and there's a lot. That was a season filled of, rookie mistakes.
Sure.
And would have loved to continue that relationship. At the end of the day, they continued growing, and it's fun to see what they did. It's fun to see what they do currently. And it's really cool just to see guys like LeVar and Raj and all those guys, Nick Sanchez, guys that I raced against, see them flourish like they have, and kind of know that I got to at least be on the ground floor for a lot of that.
So then the next 3, 4, 5 years, it's been, JD Motorsports or Jordan Anderson and getting some truck rides. Was there any point that you were like, man, I think this is it? Like, yeah. I got to go find something else. We were just talking about, for those of you that don't know, you also spot. I mean, you've worked for teams basically doing everything and anything. We had Brad Perez on. He did the same thing. But, like, at what point were you like, man, I don't know if this is going to work out?
I mean, I've had that every year.
True.
Like, I've had that a lot of times. I would say it definitely came to a head a lot. I'd say kind of like in the early 2020s, like 21, 2022. I had a lot going on in my head, just trying to work through all this stuff. You're spending 6-7 days a week trying to find money for racing. And then, at the same time, you're getting a lot of stuff thrown at you. You're not getting what you need out of it. And it's just, that's why I kind of made a lot of the changes I've made in the last 3 years is kind of, hey, let me just, we were talking before the show starts. I just want to go have fun and be able to live and, be able to live, have a, make a living, but also prioritize myself, prioritize my family, prioritize my future. And I've been really fortunate to align with a lot of fantastic people. Obviously, the folks at Critical Path Security have helped me out a lot, when it comes to getting these opportunities, and the amazing partners that I currently have. That was a big thing for me, was just making sure that I put myself in a place where I can go and succeed. There's only so much I can do in certain situations. I'm really thankful for every situation that I've had. And I think that every year as a driver, I've progressed. I think at the end of last season, I finished my Euro season top 10 in points after a lot of adversity. I got to drive a couple races with Mike, and we qualified really well for that race, for some races with his car, and ran really well despite some issues. But at the end of the day, I kind of left the year with a little bit of a pep in my step, because I feel like as a driver, I'm in the best place mentally, but also capabilities wise that I've been in ages, just because I've been able to show up to road courses, which isn't normal for me. I didn't grow up a road racer, but I'm showing up to these road courses and racing against, FIA champions over in Europe and beating them. Or running with them, or just as fast. That was a really, really cool thing for me.
Yeah, sometimes you got to get out of your comfort zone, right? Yep. And you learn those new tools, and suddenly, you find yourself developing as a race car driver. That's really, really cool. Okay, so you're on this journey now, and now going to run Canada for the majority of the season. Is the end goal to eventually come back and maybe this reignites something on the NASCAR side, or are you pretty much content doing what you're doing?
I mean, obviously you have to look at everything from, a broad perspective. Do I want to be back in Xfinity on a, relatively consistent basis? Absolutely. But at the same time, I've spent, a lot of my career running, for smaller organizations, smaller teams, trying to find money week in and week out, doing all this. And it got to a point where I couldn't do it. Like, I just was burnt out, and burnout is real. Like, I tell people that all the time. It's like, don't put yourself in a spot. Like, the minute I started prioritizing, kind of putting myself in a situation to where if I drove for a team, I was able to put my 110% effort in and not 70% in, because 30% of my mind was worried about something else. Now I'm able to put 100% in, and I feel like the results show it. I feel like my capabilities on track have improved because of that. So to answer your question, yes, absolutely. I want to be in Xfinity. I want to be out. I mean, heck, I want to race on Sundays one time, right? At least. But at the end of the day, if the opportunity doesn't present itself, I'm happy. I'm happy with where I'm at. I'm happy with what I'm doing. I'm still going to work my tail off to get there, and I'm going to put in an honest effort to get out there and, find myself a good spot with a good team. But at the end of the day, it comes down to finding the right opportunity for myself, for my partners, and being able to deliver on every front. That's the main focus there.
Well, before we let you go, let's talk expectations going into this NASCAR Canada season. Obviously, with something new, you probably have things you want to check off as you go through the season, but what are realistically your expectations? What's a good year for Ryan Vargas this year?
A good year for me is just racking off good finishes, right? Finishing, in the top 10, knocking off some top 5s, maybe challenging for a win, having that outside shot, right? Because these guys up there, they're so talented. They've had the experience. I mean, DJ, he's raced in every season of the NASCAR Canada series, right? So it's like, I have a heck of an experienced teammate when I go up there. So I'm good. For me, a good season, a good expectations is, being consistent, delivering the results that are needed, and putting myself in a position to succeed out there, and hopefully kind of, turning heads. That's the main thing.
Well, we're so excited for you.
Yeah.
I know I'm excited for you, and maybe one of these days I'd like to get up there and go to a race. I've watched so many on Flow Racing, and it's like, man, if my schedule can just make it opportunity-wise for me to get up there, I'd love to, but best of luck this year.
No, thank you. And all the races, I believe this year they're on YouTube for the people here in the States, so it's also going to be even easier to watch, too. Not that it wasn't easy before, but
sure.
You know what I mean?
And now you don't even need a subscription.
Yeah, now you don't, you can just watch it. But nonetheless, really excited and appreciate y'all having me, and really excited to get after it in my critical path security Dodge Challenger.
Yeah, how about that?
Dodge Challenger.
Throwing it back.
I'm so pumped about that. When I talked to DJ, I was like, do I get to drive a Dodge? He's like, yeah. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, shoot, you've driven Chevys. You've pretty much driven almost everything at some point.
I've driven every manufacturer now.
Yeah.
Once I start
Yep.
in CTMP, I will have driven every manufacturer.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Looking forward to it. The 19th season of NASCAR Canada begins May 18th at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, and Ryan Vargas will be on the starting grid for that. So we'll see you then.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Absolutely. Ryan Vargas joining us here in studio for NASCAR Coast to Coast. Coming up, one more order of business, and that's the calendar. Lots of regional racing coming up. We'll preview what's to come coming up next.
3, 2, 1. Start your engine.
The NASCAR channel is streaming now, exclusively on Tubi.
Tell them we got it.
Go deeper into NASCAR with 24/7 news, documentaries, and explore the vault of timeless NASCAR stories and unforgettable races. From crushing defeats to the thrill of victory.
Go, baby.
The NASCAR channel, always on, always free. Only on Tubi.
Welcome back to NASCAR Coast to Coast here on the Motor Racing Network. Appreciate Ryan Vargas joining us in studio. What a great conversation and a really good look at what it takes to make it in the sport of NASCAR, really just being a race car driver and the career path that many have taken. I know we had Brad Perez a couple of weeks ago, kind of a similar story, and it really is inspiring. So if you're out there and you're a youngster in the short track world or maybe looking to get your career started in motorsports, you kind of get a good look at what it takes. And so we appreciate Ryan kind of being open and candid, telling his story, and wishing him the best of luck at the NASCAR Canada season. Opens May 18th again at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. We'll look to have him on over the course of the rest of the year and kind of see how his season is going up north of the border. Well, speaking of seasons, we continue on with the NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour. It's been a month since we've had them on track, the Ground Pounders in their 40th season. And, of course, they're back in action, breaking the ice almost literally and figuratively with the icebreaker at Thompson Motor Speedway on Sunday, March 30th, coming up 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time this Sunday on Flow Racing. More than 30 cars are entered in this one, and yes, your usual characters are involved, from Justin Bonsignor, who, of course, ran at Miami and has had the big month when it came to the birth of his son in the McDonald's parking lot, and then qualified top 10 at Homestead Miami Speedway. But also our former champions, Ron Silk is back in the field. Matt Hirschman, of course, is entered as well. And then some of the names that we like seeing up in the Northeast with the Mike Stefanics, or not Mike Stefanik, I'm sorry. He's one of the legends, though, that is from that area. But plenty of others. Woody Pitkat, I believe, is on the entrant list. Kopchik as well. So you've got some Northeastern flavor, and, of course, your traditional NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour entrants. But mentioned about Justin Bonsignor, no driver has won more tour races at Thompson than the Mike Stefanics of the world. He won 15. Justin Bonsignor has one away. He has 14, so he's going for history again this weekend. We mentioned some of the other names that are going to be involved. Jake Johnson, Woody Pitkat, Catalano brothers are back in action. It'll be fun time up there at Thompson Motor Speedway. Again, that's part of the Icebreaker weekend. There's plenty of racing on Saturday with some of their local divisions as that racetrack gets opened for their season of racing. But again, on Sunday, it all culminates with the tour race, 150 laps at Thompson Motor Speedway. Cars Tour is also in action, so kind of a couple of our big big events going on this weekend with the Accent Imaging 125. Wake County Speedway is the home of this one, as the late model stocks are back in action for the ZMAX Cars Tour on Saturday. 5 p.m. Eastern time is the start for them. Smallest track on the schedule coming up for the Cars Tour, so not many race cars are going to be left without some sort of ding or scratch around them after the course of their 125 lapper. Connor Hall, though, enters as the probably the most momentum, of course, claimed the tour opener for Junior Motorsports back at New River All-American Speedway a few weeks ago, trying to continue that momentum at Wake County Speedway. Of course, he leads Bobby McCarty in the championship points very early in the season, just 7 markers. So Bobby is certainly going to try to get one back this weekend at Wake County. Landon Lewis, of course, is going to be back in the field. He got his first career win in August here at Wake County a year ago. And then Carson Houslip started on the front row last year. He finished in 7th. He's one of the locals from out there at Wake County Speedway. So the tour rolls in for race number 2 this season for late model stocks again on Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern time. Now, while all the short track racing is going on, Motor Racing Network, we are headed to Virginia and Martinsville Speedway this weekend. The first of a couple we get to drive to for at least some of our Charlotte folks, which will be nice for a triple header for NASCAR National Series between the trucks, Xfinity cars, and of course the Cup Series. That all begins Friday night with the NASCAR Racing Network getting you set for the boys and girls of the Blue Ridge 200 for the trucks at 7 p.m. Eastern on Friday night on MRN. Of course, Saturday doubleheader with Cup Series practice and pole qualifying, followed by the U.S. Marine Corps 250 for the NASCAR Xfinity Series, qualifying at 2 o'clock Eastern. Xfinity cars, 4:30 p.m. airtime on MRN. And then, of course, Sunday NASCAR Live Race Day gets you set for the Cup Series Cookout 400 at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll be up there. Pat Jaggers, our producer, will be up there. His first one on the road this year. And, of course, the whole cast and characters of the Motor Racing Network crew. We will bring you live flag-to-flag coverage of all things Martinsville Speedway. So short track for us, plenty of short track racing for you to catch up on across the country here as we near the end of March 2025. For Pat Jaggers, my name is Chris Wilner. Our guest this week, Ryan Vargas. We thank you for tuning in to NASCAR Coast to Coast. We'll see you next week where we discuss all things short track racing.